Okay, boxing fans, right now I'm talking about Robert the Ghost Guerrero versus Andre Berto. Starting with Robert the Ghost Guerrero. He is 30 wins, 18 of which by way of knockout, to a single defeat and also a draw thrown in there too. That's 34 fights. I assume there's also two no contests somewhere in there thrown in, considering the math don't add up. So yeah, and then there's Andre Berto, 128, 22 of which by way of knockouts to a single defeat. If I go straight into the advantages, and this should be a very good fight. You've basically got two different things. You've got power and strength versus boxing ability. Basically, you look at the power, and it's obviously with Andre Berto, he is naturally bigger in terms of frame. You know, they're actually both the same height and same reach, but Berto will be draining down to this weight limit, while Guerrero definitely is not. He's definitely not draining down. Berto is much stronger, and he's the much bigger puncher, and he's the much more explosive in this fight. You look at Guerrero, and he's definitely not a big puncher at all. At 135, he had some pop to his punch. He couldn't stop people like Michael Katsidis or Yo Casamayor when he was at the end, but he still dominated them and kept them away with enough pop in his punch. However, sorry about this, guys, but since he's moved up to 147, he has limited to zero pop in his punch at all. You know, he hit that Selçuk guy in with the kitchen sink, and he was still there for the full 12 rounds afterwards. I mean, at one point, I remember him landing a peach of a uppercut that would have knocked any person down, you know, any person. But I was just like, and what? And just kept coming forward. It must have been really, really bad for Guerrero. It must have made him think, you know, is he gonna actually consider going back down? But then he obviously won the fight and then stayed at 147 pounds. When you look at the speed, on the other hand, I actually give that to Robert Guerrero. You know, he has been through the weight. He's naturally smaller in terms of frame. He's tall, he's thin, and that should all help his speed out. Berto being bigger, he will have decent speed, but it's only for the short term. He cannot keep it going for the full 12 rounds. He's like short term power and speed, long term disaster really. You know, he's not got a lot in his game plan for the long term. If he doesn't get you totally out of the fight within 6 rounds, it could be a very hard night for him. He's shown that against people like Victor Ortiz. Looking at stamina, Guerrero's got that, believe it or not. You'd think for a guy who's coming up in the weights, he wouldn't be able to pace himself as well, or he wouldn't be able to have a high punch output. The only thing is, he actually is the opposite. He actually has very good stamina. He's got a large punch output, and he can keep that going for the full 12 rounds. Berto, on the other hand, he does not believe in stamina. He thinks it's the work of the devil. Basically, like I said again, short term power and speed, long term he cannot keep it up. It's more of a disaster really. You know, he's not fought in over a year as well. Add that into the bank. I don't know if he's been juicing up or not. Let's just say, if he has, his stamina will be worse. If he's not, has he been in training as hard as he would have been? Should he not have? I don't know. He could have actually took time off, you know, and really put his work into the stamina part of his game. Or he could have went away and juiced up in the time that he didn't have a fight actually. But let's just say he didn't, for argument's sake. It still could be a very hard night for him in terms of stamina or in terms of, you know, timing and stuff like that. I look at the boxing ability, and I give that one to Robert Guerrero. You know, he is a very good boxer, a very technical guy. He can box on the front foot and on the back foot. I like his nice spear and jab. He can work off it very well. He's like, if you look at, I can't think of who to compare him to right now, to be honest. But I think he's quite brilliant. I really like him. He can work off his jab. You know, he can use the straight backhand. He can add in hooks, and he can use the uppercuts like he did in the Aydin fight. He used some nice sweet uppercuts in there. He can also fight partly on the inside. Not great, but he can hold his own in the inside. He can put out his nice large output, so it's very hard to best him on the scorecards. You have to beat him through clean, crisp punching, something that you'll have to consider sooner or later. You look at Berto, and this guy's much more explosive. You know, explosive fighter. He jumps in on you. He'll try and overwhelm you with his punches. He hasn't actually fought that many 147-pound, world level contenders. If you look at his record, and you just see that Golden Boy have pretty much pulled up 140-pound fighters and gave them to Andre Berto for his world title. The Ghost, obviously a 135-pounder, should fill Berto with confidence as he's been here before. He's dealt with these people before, and he's come out victorious. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He does nothing spectacular, but he does have some flaws in his game too. Like I said, his lack of stamina is a serious flaw. He's got a suspect defense and ultimately a suspect chin. If you add all those together, how many of those can the Ghost Guerrero take advantage of? You can take advantage of the stamina issue by putting out a large punch output, making him work hard. You can take advantage of his suspect defense by landing good clean punches. But suspect chin, I don't think that the Ghost can knock him out. I don't think he's got the power to do it at this weight limit. Even though his chin's a bit suspect, I still don't think he can. Like I said, moving on to the chin, Guerrero, he's got a good chin. He's shown us he's got a very good chin throughout his career. He's taken good shots at 147 pounds from Selçuk Aydin when he was the mandatory. He was also mandatory back when Berto was champion, and for some reason that fight didn't happen. So respect there to Guerrero for taking the fight. Less respect for Berto for not taking the fight. Berto must think he's better than his mandatories, I assume. But then again, you look at Berto's chin, and like I said, he is suspect. He does take some flush shots, and he's been dropped before, and he's been hurt before. Realistically, he was supposed to bulldoze through Victor Ortiz, but he found that it was not going to happen that way. He found himself way too open. He was able to be hurt by Victor Ortiz, and he's also been dropped by journeyman in the past. I think he got dropped in his 18th fight by some dude. I've never heard of him. And he also got hurt by Collazo too, in what was a very close fight. Some say controversial. So overall, how am I going to predict this fight? I'm going to think if Berto doesn't get Guerrero out there inside the first 6 rounds, then Guerrero wins a unanimous decision. Value for money, I'm going to put my bet on value for money. I'm going to pick Robert the Ghost Guerrero by unanimous decision. And by the way, the Ghost, he follows me on Twitter. I just want to throw that out there if anyone's interested. Woohoo!